Hello and welcome to Chapter 11 of The Saints of Snowville, the story of a Mormon bishop. Let's get started. Jared Perry lived on his wife's small inheritance the first 2 years of marriage, and when that was gone, he sometimes had to call upon the church for help or live a meager income. His farm was small, so he attempted to supplement his income by trucking. He hauled pigs and cattle to the Ogden market and brought back groceries and other products from the other stores in Paris and other communities in the Bear Lake Valley. Jared was not a lazy person, nor it would be said that he was ambitious. He put in about an average week of what he called work. His problem was that he was addicted to talk. If he went to Montpelier for an hour's business, he stayed all day and a half the night talking. Most truckers could make the trip to Ogden and back in a day, if they got up in the morning. Normally, it was about a day and a half trip. Pretty Perry always took 3 days and sometimes 4. Jared went down to Ogden in one day. He spent the next day loading groceries and visiting. The next day, he started home. He visited and talked to some of the people in the Schofields in Ogden. He usually found someone in Brigham City, Logan, and Garden City to talk to. Usually at midnight of the third day, he arrived in Snowville. People usually had to just get up and leave to get away from his talk. Pretty Perry was a religious fanatic. He blamed everything on the will of the Lord, but to his credit, he also acknowledged the Lord's hand in any blessings bestowed upon his family. Brother Perry had been on a mission at the age of 22 and still thought he was supposed to preach to everyone he met. His preachings profited nothing. However, because he fudged a little in his dealings with the Scowcrofts and Peck brothers in Ogden, and also with service stations and others on the road to Ogden. Perry preached all sorts of strange doctrine. He was forever delving into the realm of mysteries and speculation. He fully expected that in the next world, he would be the god of another planet, and would be the spiritual father of several billion inhabitants of that planet. He sometimes wondered if Stella would be worthy and capable of being a spiritual mother of that many people, but he was supposed that several hundred or thousand other females could be assigned to him as wives if necessary. If Elder Perry made $100 a month, he got up in fast and testimony meeting and thanked the Lord for blessing him with the abundance of material things. If he lost money the next month, he thanked the Lord for being chastised and putting obstacles in his way. He also depreciated the wealth on these more frequent occasions. In short, Jared was a religious nut with a big mouth. In the late afternoon of July 25, 1940, Jared was returning with his truck on the 4th day of the trip to Ogden. At about 6 p.m., he was on top of Garden City Hill. As he rounded one of the hairpin curves on his decline, he met head-on with an automobile of Willis Adams of Bloomington. Jared had made a wide swing on this curve and was in the middle of the road, or a little on the Adams side. Both vehicles were going fairly fast. The truck was heavier, loaded and going downhill. The Adams automobile went off the shoulder and rolled over twice. Even though the Adams vehicle was on fire, Jared backed up his truck and pulled it over to the extreme right before he got out and went to the aid of the Adamses. It was fully 5 minutes before Jared moved his truck and got to the Adams vehicle. Ruth Adams, with a broken leg and badly cut, managed to pull her 2 small daughters out of the back seat and to safety before she collapsed. Willis Adams was pinned in the car under the steering wheel and could only scream. By the time Jared got to the Adams vehicle, it was an inferno. Willis perished in the automobile from burns and shock. Ruth Adams, a beautiful woman, would carry her scars to the grave, and the Adams family and the Saints of Bloomington would always believe that if Brother Perry had gone immediately to the rescue of the Adamses instead of putting his truck in its own lane of traffic, Willis Adams would have been saved. The feeling in Bear Lake ran high against Jared that week. The deputy sheriff, Albert Smith, who arrived at the scene of the accident 3 hours later, said it looked like no one was at fault. Just one of those things that couldn't be helped. The glass debris, skid marks, and other physical facts clearly showed that the point of impact was 4 feet past the center of the road and in the Adams lane of traffic. Before his tragic death, Willis Adams was an energetic 25-year-old rancher. He was married to the best-looking girl in Bear Lake Valley, Ruth Taylor, and had 2 daughters. He smoked occasionally, swore and drank coffee every day. He came to church only once in a while, but he was a good contributor to the church and made a very good living for his family. Brother Perry mulled the circumstances of the accident over in his mind for the next 10 days. By the first Sunday in August, Jared had a very simple explanation worked out in his little mind about the tragic death of young Adams. It was the will of the Lord. The first Sunday in August, August 4th, 1940, Bishop Jackson commenced the fast and testimony meeting in the usual manner. He thanked the Lord for blessings bestowed on his family and the Snowville ward. The father of the ward then invited the ward members to bear their testimonies. As soon as the bishop sat down, Brother Perry sprang to his feet. Instead of speaking from where he stood in the usual manner, he walked to the front and stood behind the pulpit. He immediately got to the matter that was on his mind. He said, "These last few days have been very trying days in my life. I have searched my heart for an explanation, and after prayer and fasting, the Lord has revealed to me His purpose in the death of Brother Adams. Brother Adams, as some of you know, was drifting from the church. He did not obey the word of wisdom. He did not come to church, and his main interest in life was obtaining filthy lucre. Brother Adams was straying from the gospel that he had learned at his mother's knee, and as a deacon in the Bloomington ward. In the great wisdom of the Lord, Brother Adams was struck down in his youth, lest he continue this righteous living and lose his immortal soul." At first I felt very sorry about what happened on Garden City Hill. Then it was revealed to me, as sure as I stand before you this day, that I was merely an instrument in the hands of the Lord to accomplish His purposes. The Lord might have used other means to strike down Willis Adams, but He selected His method, and who is to say that it would have been better some other way? As I look back over the events of July 25th, I can see the hand of the Lord guiding me at every turn. I got up early in the morning, intending to get home by noon. I bathed, shaved, had a word of prayer, and went down to breakfast. I had a good breakfast of oatmeal, bacon, eggs, donuts, and milk. I never drank coffee, as you all know. On my way out of town, I went back to Peck Brothers Livestock Commission to see if they could use a load of hogs next week. While there, I talked to Brother Johnson about the celestial kingdom. I couldn't get away from him. He wondered if he would have horses or automobiles in heaven. I explained this to him. I didn't get away from the Pecks until 10 o'clock. I stopped at the Conoco station in Brigham City to check the radiator. My truck has been heating up coming home. The truck is about worn out. I have a new one ordered from Stocks and Peelier. If the Lord continues to bless me, I will be able to pay for it when it comes in the station. I saw Brother Jensen from Bloomington. We talked about what we would be doing in the spirit world. I told him that we would have our wives, if we were worthy, and would continue to have children and raise families. Brother Jensen said his wife had had enough raising and bearing of children in this vale of tears and hoped to get rest from bawling kids in the hereafter. I told him that maybe wives of unworthy men would be given him, and he could raise more children by these females. I didn't get to Logan until 2 in the afternoon. I was hungry, so I went to that little cafe, just as you know, coming into town on the south. I forget the name. I had a hot roast beef sandwich, a bowl of vegetable soup, a piece of apple pie with ice cream, and 2 glasses of milk. In the cafe, I talked to a fellow from Smithfield. I never did find out his name. He was a high priest from the 2nd Ward. I knew at once he was a good Latter-day Saint because he drank only milk, the same as I did. Most of the other men in there were swearing, drinking coffee, and smoking. We talked about how the Democrats were ruining this country with the NRA and about the United Order. Every time I tried to leave, this man wanted me to stay and talk longer. It was as if the Lord had a hold of me and wouldn't let me go. I didn't get away from Logan until 4 o'clock. My truck started to heat again going up Logan Canyon, so I stopped at Rick's Springs to check the water and get a drink from the spring. Well, there I got into a conversation with the tourist from New Jersey. I talked to him and his wife about an hour. The Lord wouldn't let me leave. This man had never heard the gospel, so I told him about Brigham Young and polygamy. I told him that Brigham Young had 27 wives, but never even slept with some of them. This man got smart with me and said that perhaps Brigham Young had so many wives that he couldn't take care of them all. I bore my testimony to him, and he left. As I look back over this day, I can see that the Lord was holding me back all day. Every time I tried to move on, someone came along to talk to me from Ogden and to Rick Springs. After this man from New Jersey left, I had a word of prayer and started again for home. By this time, the Lord had held me back long enough for Brother Adams to be coming up the hill. I remember now that even on the 25th, I began to wonder why the Lord made it so hard for me to get home. I had a mission to perform on Garden City Hill, and the Lord, in all His wisdom, made sure that I was there at the right time to perform it. God moves in mysterious ways. His wonders to perform Brother Adams' time had come, and none could stay the hand of the Almighty. When the Lord has work for us to do, we should put our shoulder to the wheel and not shrink our duty, and should do it cheerfully and without complaint. Brother Perry testified to this truthfulness of the gospel and went back to his seat. The saints of Snowville were stunned at this incredible account of Willis Adams' death. They all knew that the Lord had held Jared back every time he went any place. This trip was no different from any other except that he had killed a young man who left a widow and 2 children. No one spoke after Jared. No one felt like it. The saints were sick. After fully 5 minutes of absolute silence, the bishop closed the meeting with a very few words. When he rose to terminate the meeting, he was red in the face with anger. He said, "Brother Perry's explanation of the accident does not reflect the thinking of the Snowville Ward Bishopric." The bishop would yet have something to say to Pretty Perry about this. He only hoped that the Adams family wouldn't hear about this testimony meeting, but they did. For the next 10 years, Bertha Lowe, older sister of Willis Adams, called the Perry home on the telephone each week and inquired if Jared was out on the road in his truck. She said she called so she would know if it was safe for other people to go out on the highway.